Tom has had an active technology career over the past 25 years. He co-founded Bedford Software, bringing Simply Accounting to market. The product is still a bestseller. He also co-founded Richmond Software, bringing Maximizer to market. This product was subsequently acquired by Multi-Active and also remains a bestseller under the Maximizer name. Tom spent several years with Ernst & Young in Vancouver as a vice president of corporate finance. In this role, he helped many local technologies prepare for financing or exit. Subsequent to this, he became president of a client company, Voice Mobility. Since 2001, he has been an angel investor, director, coach, mentor, and advisor to many CEOs of BC technology companies in the Lower Mainland and on Vancouver Island. Please welcome Tom O'Flaherty.
Thank you, Ellen. And I'll assume everybody can hear this okay. At least I can hear it, so it must be fine. I'm going to ask two questions, and I'll ask them both so you can quickly decide how you're going to answer. One question is, which of you are here because you want to be advisors or think you want to be advisors? And the other question is, how many of you are founder CEOs who want advisors? So how many want advisors? You think you want advisors? Okay, and then could I assume the others are here because you're interested in being advisors? So how many want to be an advisor or think you want to be an advisor? Okay, fair enough. The presentation is actually geared specifically to people that want to be advisors, but the same information applies. It's just sometimes which pronoun I use at the beginning of the sentence. So the information really is common to both. So advisory boards, I'm not sure if it's my own observations or what, but these seem to be really coming into vogue these days. But as Ellen mentioned, and my experience is, a lot of people talk about it, want to do it, but there's a lot of unknowns. And so what I did, certainly with the help of some other people that I serve on boards with, is put together some best practices. The information that I'll present is all written down, and this will be available on the website on a link, so you can kind of pay attention and listen, but all of the written information will be available after the session. So first of all, if there's any doubters, I just thought let's look at a couple of endorsements here. Many of you, I think, will know about Vern Harnish. He has the gazelles.com website, and quite a guru in terms of young growing companies. And I'll just read this in case you can't. After working with my own board for many years and collecting the experiences of others with advisory boards, my first suggestion is simply to get one. Greg Clark writes for Profit magazines. Some of you may have heard of Greg. In my early days as founder and CEO of College Pro Painters, I relied heavily on ad hoc advice. The advice I got seemed helpful, but it was potentially flawed. Random advisors usually didn't know much about my business, and they really didn't know me. In my later years, I formed an advisory board. This worked far better than obtaining ad hoc counsel. Rick Spence writes a lot about this in the National Post. No business leader is an island. Now more than ever, your business needs an advisory board. A little closer to home in Nanaimo, David Welch, Contama Research. My advisory board has helped me to identify our real priorities and distinguish the opportunities we should chase and those we should ignore. My board also helps me focus on meeting the commitments we agreed on. Meetings ensure that we have a rhythm and that initiatives are not dropped. They also help by just being encouraging and supportive, and so on, when I lose my sense of direction and confidence. Bob Park in Surrey, Financial CAD. When my board replaced my co-founder with me, the one thing I did know was how little I knew. So Bob was distinguished in that regard. I had no hesitation in getting and acting on advice. The company has done well on my watch, and this would simply not have happened if I had acted alone. Under my predecessor, we struggled without getting the outside advice we needed, and we wasted years in the process. And Václav Vinchalek, Pacific Coast Information Systems. If you're serious about starting and running a company, you have to have a board of advisors. They are the critical sounding board for your thoughts and your connection to the business community. They are the ones who tell you that you are not right. They keep you accountable to yourself. Getting a board of advisors moved my company to another level. It's like having your own MBA course. And just in case there's any doubters in the room, and this was sort of touched on at the previous session, most sophisticated investors will look for the presence of advisors. certainly if you're going for your first investor. And the absence of any of those is certainly a big downer. So let's get at it. One of the first questions that comes up is how are investors and advisors different, or I already have a board of directors. Do I need advisors as well? Well, they're actually quite different. So let's look at directors first. Generally, directors is not a voluntary association. Other people's money usually causes directors to happen. I think I can say for certain that any venture capitalist doing an A round of several $1 million is going to want a seat on your board, plain and simple. Even if you're taking money from family and friends and business associates, quite often they'll be comforted if you have outside directors that are going to hopefully watch over their interests. There is some risk in being a director, and some directors will want D&O insurance. You are accountable to directors. They do sit in judgment and governance. Generally speaking, they're hard to fire. If you have helped yourself to other people's money, directors are generally going to be part of your landscape until you pay them back. They may be able to fire you if they don't like the way you're doing things. That all sounds a bit negative. Directors can be very helpful. They can open doors, make connections, give advice, and so on. But essentially, it's not a voluntary association. In contrast, advisors are voluntary, so you don't have to have them. And as a founder CEO, you can choose whether or not to assemble a group of advisors. They can't fire you. You can fire them. So they only exist if they are helpful to the founder CEO. There's very little risk. I'd say there's no risk, and so insurance isn't really an issue. And usually you can be more open with advisors as a CEO because you don't have that. They can fire me if they don't like the job I'm doing. So the relationship can almost, I would say invariably, be closer and more open than it is with a board of directors. Should you have both? In theory, yes, but in practice, for the smaller type of companies that I expect I'm speaking to here, two are too difficult to sort of manage and handle. And I would say if you do have a board of directors because you have helped yourself to other people's money, your best bet is to do as good a job as you can of selecting directors that can help you, but not try to form an advisory board as well. There's just too much effort in arranging meetings, keeping them informed, listening to both groups, doing what they say, and so on. So our advice is that you should have one or the other, but not both. So what is the advice usually about? What do people or founder CEOs want advice about? Well, usually, in fact, I would say almost always, it's not about the technology or about the particular domain, whether that's customer relationship management or business intelligence or records management or financial analytics or whatever. Most of the small companies that would seek advisors have an abundance of technical expertise and also domain expertise. So the advice is always around how to execute better and how to grow the business. It's sort of the business side of giving advice. This, I think, is a pretty good list. I would say generally top of the list for a lot of the companies I work with is growth, marketing, and sales. How do I get better at doing this? Especially repeatable sales. How do I get more sales with less effort than I am right now? Business development, that's maybe developing channels, value-added relationships, partners in other countries. HR issues is a big one, especially if you've been successful in raising a chunk of money and you hire a bunch of people, you run into all sorts of gnarly HR issues. Terminations are often difficult. People having the wrong idea about firing for cause, thinking because they're not doing the work, I can fire them and not pay them anything. Very expensive and time-consuming. Raising money, strategic planning, liquidity events. You may be in this for life, but your investors aren't, and they'll want to understand how you're going to pay them back.